Hello, my lovely people. So many of you know that I have written 3 angel books. These are novels. And if you love a good romance, a good laugh, a good giggle, and you love everything that's spiritual and universal and angelic, you're going to love these books. It's a trilogy of 3 books, and it starts off with Sarah in her mid-30s with a chaotic life in book 1. And by the time we get to the end of book 1, she's sorted and happy. Book 2, Angel in My Heart, sees the relationships develop as she grows up and older into her 40s. And book 3, Angel in My Fingers, sees her develop and grow even more, with the angels all around them and her family all of the time. And so I thought, well, you don't know anything about my books, so I'm going to give you a little prologue. Clarabelle is on a mission. With the children now at school, it's high time that her Sarah focused. Enter Cassie, here to help Sarah become the best tarot and angel card reader this side of Mars. Can Sarah do what Clarabelle needs her to do? And can she do it in time? Frieda has a secret. A dark, foreboding, sinister secret. And it is only Sarah who can unlock it. Can she help Frieda find the peace that she has never known? Or is she jeopardising a friendship that has lasted for nearly 40 years? In this sequel, the 3rd in the Angel series, it is time for Sarah to move to the next level. Can she cope with the pressure or with what she discovers? Pain and trauma, secrets and lies. No one knows what she's been through, and Frieda's determined to keep it that way. With such resistance, can Sarah repair a broken spirit and bring a happy ending, even with Clarabelle and Cassie's help? Clarabelle thinks so, but only Frieda can be the one to determine that. Cassie watched the woman approach the door with a knowing smile, examining her carefully from head to foot. Yes, she was definitely nervous. A first-timer then, she nodded to herself thoughtfully. They were always nervous the first time, although Cassie had no idea why. Was it Ma they were scared of, or just the cards? There was nothing in either Ma or the cards to be scared of, but she could feel the woman's nervousness emanating down the path and through the closed front door of the old cottage, like little tidal waves of panic. Bless her, she thought. She smiled reassuringly at the woman from her seat in the window, making sure that her smile went all the way up to her emerald green eyes, and smiled the biggest smile she could find inside her, but it did not register to the visitor. The woman's sad eyes were fixed so intently on the heavy wooden door at the end of the gravel path that she failed to notice either the huge smile or the twinkling green eyes that shone warmth and reassurance to her through the glass. Cassie felt sorry for the woman, who clearly had the weight of the world on her shoulders, poor thing. Her head was drooped heavily as she walked down the path, her shoulders hunched, her worries prematurely aging her, so much so that she looked more like someone of Ma's age than the middle-aged woman that she clearly was. "Don't panic, my dear. Ma will sort you out," Cassie said confidently, looking over at Ma with adoration. The old lady sat quietly at the small round table waiting. Her gnarled ancient hands rested gently in her lap, holding the crystal ball lovingly as she gazed at the cards on the table before her. Her grey eyes focused on her prayers and the cards simultaneously as she waited for the bell to ring. If she heard the logs crackling in the hearth or noticed the fragrance from the incense burning in its stand, she did not show it, so intent was she on her mantra. Soft light bounced off the faded walls of the old stone cottage from the many candles lit throughout the room as she repeated her words. "Mother, Father, God Creator, help me to help this woman to find her way," she whispered softly, stroking the clear quartz crystal ball in her hands. "Fill these cards with love, with healing, with inspiration, with knowledge, and with guidance to help this lady within her highest good. Thank you." Cassie watched quietly, knowing not to disturb Ma when she was working. She was often working, but never seemed to tire despite her advanced years and increasingly frail body. She didn't know how old Ma was, or how long she'd been helping people, but she knew that it was a very long time indeed. She'd been with Ma some years now, and in that time she had seen hundreds, if not thousands of people like this one come and go. The new ones always came nervous and left smiling. The old ones, the ones who came time and time again, came and went with a smile, but always went with a bigger smile than when they arrived. Ma was a wonder. The doorbell rang loudly, making them both jump, even though it was expected. Ma quickly placed the crystal ball on its stand in the centre of the table, picked up her cane resting by her side, and stood up slowly, giving her old bones time to shift position as she went from a sitting to a standing position. She shuffled slowly to the door, her old feet not quite lifting as they should, as she manoeuvred herself down the hall, leaning on her trusty cane for both balance and support. "Coming, my dear," she called brightly, in a voice stronger than a woman her age had any right to have. She shuffled down the hall towards the door. "Nearly there," she called again, reaching the door with a bright smile. She shuffled her weight onto her left leg, adjusting her cane, allowing her to balance her weight onto it as she reached for and opened the front door with her right hand. "Good morning, my dear," she beamed brightly at the woman standing nervously on the doorstep. "You must be Jane. I'm Ma." She saw the woman's hesitation and quickly added, "Everyone calls me Ma, my dear. Do come in, come in." Ma showed the woman in, beckoning her to take a seat in the chair opposite her own at the round table. Shuffling around to her own chair, she sat down carefully, gently placing her cane to the side of the table, resting it against the old china pot stand in the corner of the room with great care. Having satisfied herself that all was right and well with her cane, she looked up, smiling gently at the woman in front of her. Kindness and reassurance shone out from Ma's eyes as she picked up the tarot deck on the table in front of her. Shuffling the cards slowly, she handed them to the woman with a smile that said, "Trust me." Cassie beamed happily as she made herself comfortable on the window seat. It had begun. She loved watching Ma work. The old lady's eyes twinkled with love and compassion as she set about helping the woman to find her way. Her soft white curly hair framed her old and withered face with a gentleness that befit her. She bent over the cards, concentrating intently, talking gently, explaining, helping, and guiding the woman in front of her. Over the next hour, Ma worked her magic as Cassie watched enthralled. She saw with glee the light come back into the sad woman's eyes, noticing how her back straightened gradually and her shoulders lifted from their hunched stance as the confusion and fear were lifted out of her by Ma's words, as if by magic, that somehow, in some way, Ma was making it all better. Cassie knew exactly how Ma did this. She'd watched enough of these readings to understand the power to heal and help that these tarot cards had, as did the other angel cards that Ma sometimes used. She could feel their energy, their vitality, and their power. Sometime later, money was exchanged, a hug was given, and Ma was seeing the woman out. A much lighter, brighter, and stronger woman, that much was clear. There was no doubt about it. Ma was an angel in human form. She was a miracle worker, and Cassie absolutely, totally, completely adored her. Cassie heard the door close and watched with pride as Ma shuffled back into the room and settled into her chair with a contented sigh. A serene smile on her face, she beckoned to Cassie to come closer. "Where are you, Cassandra Alexandra III?" Ma called playfully. "My eyes are tired and I can't see you so well over there." Cassie smiled, moving gracefully from the window seat. She took her place next to the old lady. Ma rarely used her given full name, but Cassie loved it when she did. It made her feel very grand. "Oh, there you are. Well, that went well, Cassie, don't you think, dear?" Ma grinned happily. Cassie nodded her agreement emphatically. "Need to clear up, must always clear up," she smiled, picking up the pack of cards from the table. She shuffled them thoughtfully, but just as she was about to put them back in the pack, she hesitated. Suddenly she pulled 3 cards from the pack and laid them face up on the table. She examined them, smiled and sighed. "Enough for today, Cassie. I'm feeling rather tired. I think I shall have to take a little nap. Keep an eye on things, would you? There's a love." Ma's eyes closed, and within seconds the old lady was breathing heavily, the smile still on her lips as she drifted into a deep sleep. Her energy spent, the concentration of the last hour had taken its toll, and she was exhausted. Cassie watched over her, examining her closely. Ma's body was slim, as it had always been, but now the skin was loose and wrinkled, increasingly so every day it seemed, her frame delicate and frail as she slept in the chair. Cassie was sure that she was getting more frail and more delicate almost by the day, but Ma would have none of it. "Oh, Ma, you need to slow down. Look at you, fast asleep within seconds. You're doing too much." Cassie sighed, knowing that she was wasting her breath. Ma loved her work, and Cassie loved Ma, so that was the way it was, and that was that. She turned her attention away from Ma and looked at the cards on the table, focusing on the brightly coloured Major Arcana card that was staring up at her, demanding her attention. The card stared back. "Death," it said. "Endings," it called. Cassie knew the card didn't mean actual death. It meant merely the ending of something that needed to end in order to make way for a new beginning. The card sat next to 2 aces from the Minor Arcana. The Ace of Cups overhung the Ace of Wands, indicating new beginnings in both career and emotions. How interesting. Work is changing. Security and stability increasing. Well, that's a massive change. Huge. I wonder how that's going to unfold, she puzzled. She didn't have to wait for very long to have the answer. As if on cue from her very thoughts, suddenly the room filled with light. A warmth washed over Cassie with such intensity that she felt quite dizzy. She blinked several times, allowing her green eyes to adjust to the brightness, and as they did, she watched with horror as the spirit of Ma rose up from the chair right in front of her, floating out of her body and serenely walking into that very light, a light in which a man stood, his arms outstretched, a smile of pure love on his face. Pa? Cassie wondered, but she knew it could only be Pa that Ma would walk to like that, and not walk. She was half skipping, half running to this man with a look of sheer joy on her radiant and beautiful face. The years had fallen away from Ma, and her body seemed renewed. Cassie had never met Pa, so she looked at the family photographs on the dresser to check, and yes, it was definitely him. He'd been gone some years now, but it was clear that he'd come back to fetch Ma and take her home to upstairs. Cassie felt the love, the light, and the rightness of it all. Ma had gone out the way she wanted to, peacefully, in her sleep, surrounded by her beautiful, beloved tarot cards, her crystals, her candles, and love, having helped yet another person to find their way. Her body sat motionless in the chair. Her head drooped onto her chin. She was still, lifeless, but incredibly peaceful. Cassie let a tear slide down her face. She'd miss her so much, but it was clearly Ma's time, and Cassie just couldn't feel sad for Ma as she watched her walk away into the light, holding tightly onto Pa's hand. Ma turned silently in the light, smiled at Cassie, and waved goodbye, blowing her a kiss. Then she was gone. "Goodbye, Ma, and thank you. Be happy, Ma," Cassie called, curling up in a tight black ball of sadness on Ma's lap. She gently stroked her still and silent face with her paw. "Bye-bye, Ma. I love you," she meowed as she heard a distant voice call back from the light. "I love you too, Cassandra Alexandra III. You're the best cat, the most beautiful cat, the most magical black cat I've ever had, and I will miss you too." Cassie sat on Ma's lap until they came. She didn't know how long it was, but she thought it was the next day that Ma's son came and called the doctor and the funeral parlour. He cried a lot, she noticed, but he smiled a lot too. "You're with Pa now, and that's where you need to be," he whispered, stroking Ma's face gently. Cassie looked up at him from Ma's lap. She hadn't moved in what seemed like days, and she was stiff and sore. She meowed quietly. The man looked down at the cat with understanding in his eyes and compassion in his heart. "It was her time, Cassie, her time. Come on now, come away," he said, lifting her gently away from Ma's lap. Cassie allowed him to move her, watching as the men took Ma away. He was right. It was time. It was time for her to move on too. She'd been here for 10 years, and they'd been good years, but it was time now for new starts, new beginnings. The cards had said endings, and they'd said new beginnings, new career, new emotions. That ending was now clear. Ma was gone. New beginnings meant new starts. Cassie pondered the meaning of the cards, and then she understood. It was time for her to find a new Ma, a Ma to whom she could teach the tarot cards, a Ma who would keep their joint legacy alive. It was time for Cassie to share what she knew from her old Ma and adopt herself a new Ma. But first, she had to find her. Cassie ran quickly and quietly to the cat flap and jumped through it, running full speed away from the cottage as fast as her legs would carry her. She looked behind her to make sure that she wasn't followed. She didn't want the man to catch her and take her back with him. He was nice, but he wasn't Ma, and he definitely wouldn't understand. She just knew that he wouldn't. She ran and ran for mile after mile, for hour upon hour, and eventually came to a stop on the outskirts of a village that her instincts told her would be right for her. Cassie sat under a tree and rested while she pondered the problem that was finding the new Ma and searched for a solution. Time for manifestation, she declared determinedly, and began to draw up the job description for the very special person that she would deem to adopt, although a probation period would be wise, she felt. Cassie visualized the paper, the pen, and then began the words. She will, of course, have to be very sensitive and intuitive with an open, loving heart. She'd have to believe in energy and the magical power of the universe to guide, create, heal, and inspire. And she would absolutely have to know that animals can talk, and if at all possible, be able to speak C-A-T. That's Cassandra Alexandra III. Or CAT for short, of course. Now then, what else do we need? Cassie concentrated hard as she manifested her wish lists of the other essential criteria. 1. No other pets. That's non-negotiable. Cats don't share, she declared emphatically. 2. No small children. That's non-negotiable too. I cannot possibly have young sproglets pulling on my whiskers and tail. No, sir. 3. A single older lady, I feel, would be best for all concerned, to ensure that she can have my undivided attention, which she will, of course, need in order to complete her training, and I, of course, will have hers. Again, as in one above, cats do not share, definitely need to live alone. Cassie gazed at the sky for any further inspiration, but none came. "Oh well, that's it then? No more to add? We have our wish list?" Again she looked at the sky, and this time she seemed satisfied that an answer was given of confirmation, as a big black raven flew overhead with a loud squawk. "Perfect," she declared to the sky, adding, "Which way?" The raven flew around in circles and then disappeared. Not really hugely helpful, so Cassie stayed put, waiting to be shown the way. It was simply a matter of patience. A sign would come. She curled up in the morning sunshine and went into a deep sleep, recharging her energy and readiness to continue her mission, after a brief respite of sun and snooze and the wait for the obligatory sign. Standing precisely 2 feet away from Cassie, and totally invisible to her, stood Clarabelle, grinning happily from halo to feather. "Old lady, no young children, no dog, no husband? Sadly not, but I can assure you that your other criteria will be met, and met very well, my dear C.A.T." Clarabelle giggled happily, just picturing Fred's face when Cassie turned up. "Oh my, there will be some fireworks in the brown house tonight. Smashing," she beamed, "just perfectly smashing. It's been far too quiet for far too long. Time to shake it up a bit, team?" Nat, Sephy and Elijah grinned the grin of the naughty and the wicked, with great difficulty, of course, being the perfectly, almost perfect, and nearly there doing our best guardian angels that were allocated to the various members of the chaotic Brown household. Angels that were determined to create a stir in more ways than one. "Are you really sure about this, my dear sister?" inquired a doubtful Clarence from the sidelines. "You really think this is a good idea?" he worried. "Clarence, now, what have we agreed? You know how much I appreciate all your help and mentoring over the years, but it's time for you to trust me a little now and let me do things my way." She beamed happily at the team of angels, a team standing ready, willing and able, smashing, just perfectly smashing.